Hello, it's Paula from On a String. It's a Sunday today, so I'm sorry I had double booked myself for my session that was normally planned for a Saturday. But today I'm going to do a little bit of a session that's a little bit different. I'm going to show you how I interpret brick stitch and some of the basic methods that I actually utilise for that. So I've got a couple of samples to go through and show today. I'll show you how to create a particular brick stitch triangle drop earring, how I use brick stitch as a finishing technique on bead embroidery, and how to actually read brick stitch and start from a pattern. So a couple of little bits and pieces today as well. So I'm going to just flip the camera down and I'm going to show you a couple of things that we're going to be making. So bear with me just for one moment. And welcome to everybody who's popping along today. It's really good to have you come and join me here for this brick stitch session. So some of the things I wanted to show today was how I've used brick stitch in different techniques. So hi Linda, nice to see you here, and Shelley's all the way from the US, so thanks Shelley, Sharon and Michelle and Amy, welcome everybody to today's session. Brick stitch is something that people can often find really intimidating to use. It's quite intensive time-wise, but it's a great alternative to peyote, particularly for making some shape pieces. So I wanted to show that to you. This is a technique that I've used to create these framed, I'm calling them framed earrings. They actually use an acrylic frame, and then I've used a decreasing size of beads in a circular pattern to make that earring filled with beads, and that is brick stitch. And oh, hi Terry from Connecticut, great to have you here too, and Paulina. So this one is actually using varying size beads to reduce down the size of that ring. So that's one method of using brick stitch. I've also utilised it here to create these little half rainbows as well. So again, exactly the same technique. And oh, hi from New York. Hi, Helena. This is a really nice way to actually bring in different size beads and colours as well. So that's what I'd call a half rainbow brick stitch, again using those acrylic round frames to create those. So there's sort of two designs that I have in my online store. What I'm actually going to show you today is how to create this little brick stitch triangle drop earring. So metallic frames, good morning from Preston, Alex, nice to see you here too. Metallic frames are fantastic when you are learning brick stitch because they give you a really nice solid base to actually work from. So we'll go through that. I'll show you how to create a little bit of a free-form brick stitch piece as well, so not attached to anything, but how you start with a central line and then move across using brick stitch as well. And I'm also going to show you how I use a modified brick stitch to finish off a bead embroidery piece as well. So to get started, I'm actually going to start with the easiest one, and the easiest one is actually this. And what I've got here is these little triangle metallic shapes. So lovely, you know, nice straight edge. They come in different sizes. I've got a couple of smaller ones there as well. And what I've used on them is some actual Delica beads in varying stripe lines to create that little pattern. And then I've just added a drop bead onto that as well. Now, one of the thread I'm using for this is just smoke fireline in the 6 pound. It actually really blends away really nicely into the beadwork, into the metal framework. That's what I like about it. So if you look here closely, you can only just see those stitches on that metal frame. So they actually just blend beautifully. It's a really nice way. On the clear ones, I've actually used the crystal thread there too. So you can see the crystal thread on those clear, but it's not ugly. It actually is really, blends really well into the background. And so what I'm going to do with these is I'm just going to thread my needle, and please tell me if my hands go off screen. I have a habit of forgetting that I've got to try and keep them on screen. So I'm just going to thread my needle there, just a standard size 10 needle that I always start my beadwork with. I've got my little frame here as well. And what I'm going to do is just tie my thread with a really just simple double knot onto the corner of that frame. This is, you know, a nice easy way to start a brick stitch piece, and tying that thread on there. And I'm just going to pull that tight, do a couple of double knots on there. And now I've got a starting point. Now when you start with brick stitch, I've got to remember what colours I used, you always start your first or the start of a row with 2 beads. So I'm going to pick up 2 beads, and I'm using a Delica here, and it's number colour 160. I've got 2 beads on my needle. I've got my frame that I'm holding here on my finger, and I'm actually just going to push the needle under the frame and come back up through. And I'm still holding it against my finger so that it sits nice and flat. You can see there I've now got 2 beads there. And I'm going to pull the needle up through the second bead added. Pull that tight, just move it along a little bit with my thumb, and they now sit nice and flat next to one another. Hi Terry, hi Peggy, nice to see you here too, Peggy, all the way from North Carolina. And Terry loves brick stitch, good on you Terry. I actually really like it too. It's something that a lot of people will say they don't like, but I find it a really good foundation stitch, and I think when you know foundation stitches you can grow your beading in many ways. So you can see here I've just added a 3rd bead on. Again, I'm just going to pull up through, go right across that frame there like that, pull them nice and tight. So again, I pick up a bead, I've got my frame sitting on the pad of my finger there, I push the needle up under the frame and through the centre of it, and then just add the bead by going back through the bead just added. Just snug that across and it sits nice next to each other. So hi Kim, Kim, new person joining us today. Thanks for joining, Kim. Just bring that along here. So again, I hold that on my finger and then just bring that back through and add that bead that way. So continuing to add my little row of brick stitch across, you can see how nice and neat that actually sits there on that frame. I will just keep adding that row. And brick stitch is pretty much, it's peyote stitch in its opposite form. So peyote stitch is when we do up and down, you know, fill in the gaps with peyote. Brick stitch is actually like building a row of bricks. The beads will actually sit centrally to each other. When we do the next row, they'll sit like a brick pattern, so that hence the name of brick stitch. And what we use is the thread bridges that are within the beads here, across those 2 beads, to actually add on and build our next row. So brick stitch, as I said, is a little bit more time intensive perhaps than peyote stitch, but it allows you to create some freeform shapes and use brick stitch in combination with peyote stitch to create shaped pieces. So there's some really good designs out there. You know, people create images like dolls and flowers and those sorts of things, and they would often use brick stitch and then finish off parts of it with peyote stitch. But I'm just going to show you a really simple way to create a beaded earring on a frame triangle. So metallic frames, perfect for when you are learning to get better at brick stitch. They give you something really good to hang on to. As you can see there, I'm hanging on to that piece. And I'll just add on my last one right here. Better make sure that I've got the same number on each one. Add that across. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13. I'll just check my previous one. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13. Good, we're on track. Okay, so there's my first row done. I'm actually going to add a second row now. Hi Mary, nice to have you here as well. So the second row I'm using the colour 262, which is a nice limey green colour. And remember what I said, when you start every row of brick stitch, you start with 2 beads. So I'm now going to pick up 2 beads, so 1, 2, like that. And I'm going to go through the second thread bridge here. So you can see there, I'm just pushing my needle through that thread bridge. Pull that nice and tight, and then bring my needle out through the second bead added. And what that does is just flip it so that the holes are now starting to all face outwards. And I'm just going to continue that along and see how we get a nice little sort of, you know, a little bit that sticks out a bit at the side here. We will fix that at a later stage, and that's part of the finishing. It will actually tighten those little side beads up a little bit. So don't worry when you're doing this if they're a little bit crooked. See how it just sort of sits out? It will pop back in when we finish this off. So again, I just go to the next thread bridge right across that row, and I'm getting my nice brick pattern now because this row is reduced by 1 bead on the previous, so I'll be adding 12 beads onto this one. 1 bead, so that will give that nice brick pattern. So again, I'm just running my needle and thread right away across, adding my beads one at a time by going through that thread bridge. So what have people used brick stitch for? What other things have people made with brick stitch? I'm really interested to hear what other people have done with that. As I said, really good base beading technique. If you know brick stitch, you can adapt a peyote pattern to use brick stitch if you so wish. It's a good way for doing some finishing on bead embroidery, my favourite technique in bead embroidery. I do have a session on that coming up in, I think, June, bead embroidery basics, because that's probably my favourite technique of all. But I will do a little bit of a short demonstration today on how to do a brick stitch edge on a bead embroidery piece. And keep going across. So I've got 10 added, that's 11 now. Fringe earrings mostly, Linda. Yeah, that's another one that I've done a lot of as well. You know, created a nice brick stitch triangle top and then done some free-flowing fringe from the bottom of it because your holes are all facing in exactly the right way. It's perfect for that. So again, I'm just going to bring my needle through, or not that loop there, just through that last bead added. So now I've got 2 rows. As I said, I've got my little dicky one here, but I'll fix that later. I'm now going to add a 3rd row, and my 3rd colour was pink. And this colour is 246. Again, I'll start with just 2 beads, and I'll go through that 2nd thread bridge there on my row. And pop that up through there, like that. Through the 2nd bead. Again, this one starts to kick out, but we will fix that later, and then keep adding those beads across. So again, this is just really simply quite across that whole piece, 11 beads I'll be adding this time. So I'm reducing the number of that row count by 1 every time so that I can get my nice triangle drop shape. Just like that. I have my little studio helper in here today, Honey Bun. She's sitting down on the floor here, sitting quietly. That might not last though. She does like to bark and let everybody know that she's here, which I'm sure she'll do. Now I just made a mistake there because I went through the wrong thread bridge. I went too far. So I'm just going to undo that one just to show you that this is actual live beading. This is not something I've prepared earlier. I am demonstrating this live today. My next Facebook Live session is featuring the colour green, and it's a design on the fly session. And Linda from Banjo's Beads up in New South Wales is going to supply me with green beads to use. So the fun part of that will be doing the design on the fly. So look out for that session in May. It'll be the 3rd Saturday, or maybe 4th Saturday in May, I think it is, 3rd Saturday. So for me, that session will be very much not knowing what beads Linda is providing for me and designing those pieces on the fly. So I'm really looking forward to that session, and thank you, Linda, for your support of me doing these types of things. So look out for that one. And yeah, if there are suggestions, by all means, you know, get involved in that session and talk to me during it about some of the pieces and what I can actually be utilising them for. It's great fun, isn't it, Shelley? I really enjoy doing those sessions because I have no idea what I'm going to be making until I actually open the beads, and then I have to really get creative and think about it. Again, I'm just adding my final bead here on that row. So you can see there that automatically starts to fix up that previous bead that was sticking out a little bit. So I'll just keep adding those. My next colour that I'm adding is orange, and this is the 722 colour. One of my jobs I did last year, I think, was label all of my delicas properly and put them all in the right order. So now I can actually find them. It's so much easier. So again, I'm going to skip over the first thread bridge and go through the second thread bridge and add in my orange colour row. Again, I'll be reducing the number of beads. So this time I'll be adding 10 beads across. Keep adding those all the way across. And I thought with these earrings I'd put a nice little silver row in the centre, so that ties that back to the top frame colour. And then it's got a nice little silver etched drop on the bottom of it as well. And all I need to do is just attach an earring hook. So that's a pretty, oh, sorry, my glue's just dragged its way onto the mat, as has that needle. Oh, gosh, I'm in a tangle. Right, move that out of the way. Keep adding those orange beads on, and then I think the next colour will be a nice pale blue colour. Lavinia. Did I order by number or by colour? Sometimes I've ordered them in my drawer by number because I just find that so much easier to put away rather than trying to put them away by colour. I used to have all my Delica beads just sort of stored together in a drawer, just in tubes with no order in them. And if I get a chance, I'll show you how I've actually done this now, and that it is a much, much easier system to find them. And my other beads I store by colour. So all of my like size 11 and 15 beads and 8 beads, they're all by colour, by drawer. But the Delicas I store by number. I find that easier in terms of just putting them away and knowing what I'm out of as well. But I think everybody stores their beads in different ways. But for me, Delicas by number works really well. I haven't gone down the track of making tags. I'm not that good. So I have seen and admired all the people who make the tags for their Delica beads, so they've got the colours. Hi from Georgia, hi from Florida. Nice to have you ladies here as well. Thank you for joining. But yeah, no, I don't do that. I'm not that good. So again, I'm starting my row with 2 beads and I'm going through the second thread bridge just there and popping my beads right across. So you can see here I'm now getting that nice triangle shape all the way down as well. So the triangle shape is, it's a mirror image of the frame piece that I'm using, and the size of this beaded triangle I'm making is in direct comparison to the size of the triangle frame. So I didn't really think about how many beads that I was going to use. I just did it the width of the triangle to make that size. So if you're using a smaller or bigger triangle, you could just adjust that to suit. And you can utilize this on a round frame as well. And I'll go back and I'll show how I've done an internal brick stitch on round pieces. And for those who are a little bit later joining, I'm also going to show how I use a brick stitch to finish off a bead embroidery piece as well. So there's my 5 rows that I've just created there. I'm now going to add a silver row, and the silver colour I'm using is 021, probably one of my favourite silver colours in the Delica beads. So I've got lots of that one. Again, I'm starting with 2 beads going through that second thread bridge just here and shooting that all the way across. So this must be Saturday night in the States. So all you ladies are watching me on your Saturday night. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's Sunday morning here in Melbourne, Australia. It's our autumn or fall, as you would call it. So it's probably going to be a nice-ish sort of day today, but it gets colder in the morning and at night time. Thank you for giving up your Saturday night and watching me do some beading demonstrations. I appreciate it. So there's my little silver row, and I think the silver just then ties back nicely to the frame. You can see here on the finished one where the silver row actually fits in there as well. Okay, my next row. Now, what I did was actually repeat the colour rather than start with green again. I started with the blue, so I'll pick up 2 blue beads, go through the second thread bridge. Pick up another one, and again, I'm reducing the number of beads, which is giving this really nice little brick stitch, brick effect. So the same as what you would do, you know, your brick tiles or your bricks on your house, you get that up and down pattern with a brick stitch. But it's a really firm stitch as well. You know, these pieces, they start off flimsy, and particularly when you start without a frame, you think, oh gosh, this is a really flimsy piece of beadwork, but it stiffens up really nicely because there's a lot of thread going through these beads. And there's the blue. So my next one to reverse that is orange. My thread down a little bit. So I'll pick up 2 again, go through the second thread bridge, and remember that's all you have to do when you're starting your brick stitch pieces. Start with 2, flip through, bring your thread through the bead just added, and that's pretty much it. It builds really nicely, great for striping and doing patterns. And in the second little demo piece, I'll show you how to do a pattern. And I'm actually going to use size 11 beads for that one. So you can use any style of bead for brick stitch. Obviously, it's like peyote stitch. You know, it's really flat and firm when you use a delicate bead, but you are not, you don't have to only use delicate beads. You can use seed beads as well, which I do like to use them too. Nope, again, see, I nearly slipped that one. I went through the wrong thread bridge, so I've got to come back one. So you just got to watch that you're going right next to the previous piece of bead added. So I'm down to, how many is that? That's 5 I'm up to now. So I'm going to get all the way down to 1 bead to finish that triangle shape off. My next one to add in is the green. So again, I'm starting with 2, go through that second thread bridge. And this one will be 4. So we're really getting to the end of this now. Really quick and easy project. So for something like this, these were all beads that I had obviously here in my stash. I didn't have to purchase anything special for it. I've just utilised some little metallic frames that I already had here, and then added a drop and, you know, a couple of little decorative elements. So you can see here I'm down to 3 beads. So I just want to finish that point off. So I'll just add on 2 beads now. Same thing, to start off with 2 beads like that. And then I just want to add 1 bead to finish off that point. And that bead is actually going to sit that way versus that way. So I'm just going back through I've picked up 1 bead. I'm just going back through those beads here. And you can see now my bead is facing that way versus straight up and down to finish off that point there as well. Hi, Jenny, and hi, Ivor. Nice to have you both here with me today. So remember, I started off by tying on my thread here at the start. I'll get rid of that shortly. Now, we've got these little bits that stick out a little bit here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run my thread up the side there of those beads. And that just starts to tighten those and keep them in place. So I'm going to go all the way through, right up to the top yellow. Go through that green one just there. And when I pull that tight, hi Gay, nice to have you here too. And go up through that, the first row there. And I'm just going to flip that and come back through the triangle again. And then run that thread all the way back down again. And then we can start to add on the drop bead. So I'm just running that thread all the way down the side, and you can see there that starts to straighten out those beads that were kicking out a little bit at the sides. So a nice straight edge here now. So to add my little drop, I'm just adding on, I think I started with 4 size 15 beads in the same colour in that metallic nickel silver. So I'm just picking up 1, 2, 3, 4 beads, and I've got my nice little drop here, and this is an etched silver drop. I'm going to run the needle through the drop there like that, and then pick up 1, 2, 3, 4 more size 15 beads, and then run up through the opposite side again like that. So again, what I'm doing is straightening up that edge, but I'm also utilising this to add on my little drop bead at the bottom. So now that drop bead just sits there. I'll run through that triangle again, and then run my thread all the way back down. Through the silver bead there at the end. And to make that sit nicely against that hole, what I'll do is I'll just run through those size 15, 4 size 15 beads there. And then I'm just going to pick up 1 more size 15, go through the hole, and 1 more size 15 on this side, and go back up through those 4 size 15 beads added. And what I find that does, it actually just makes the hole then is not as obvious on the side of the piece as well, just makes it just sit a bit better. So you can see there, I've now finished that second earring. So I've now got 2 earrings in this triangle design with the little silver drop, just using basic triangles as a frame. You can't see that stitching that's there across the top that starts. Hi Gloria, hi Peggy. It actually just really melts away in those earrings, and all I've got to do now is just add a hook onto those and they're finished. So that's one demonstration of a brick stitch pattern, and if you're a beginner for brick stitch, starting on a frame like this is a really good way to start that technique. So I'm just going to put that to one side, and I'm going to put these away. How good am I putting my beads away properly, which, you know, normally I just shove them all over, but I'll try and be a little bit neat and put these away. The next one I want to demonstrate and show you is how to use brick stitch in a way that is not as, it's a little bit harder to start. So your starting thread piece is a little loose, and it's only once you've done a couple of rows that it starts to firm up a little bit. But what I'll do is show you how I would read a brick stitch pattern and how I would start that particular piece. So brick stitch, I start, and I'm not sure whether I've been shown this or I've just worked it out myself, but I start with the longest part of the pattern and build my the central line to actually create the brick stitch piece. So I'm actually going to show you what pattern I'm talking about. I just found a photo of this. So here is a pair of brick stitch earrings that I created a little while ago. I don't have these anymore. I think Gay has these earrings. So with these, you actually start with your central line right here is where you start your pattern. And then you build up either side of these to create this. And it's a really easy way then to do that reduction and bring down your shape size. And the way that you read the pattern is from the center line, and then you continue your brick stitch, picking up your different odd shaped or colored beads there to show that. So that's a pair of brick stitch earrings that I've done. I'm also just going to show you another pattern and how I would read that pattern today. So here's another pattern, and this is called a floral squash pair of earrings. So again, you could use peyote stitch to create these, or you could use brick stitch. If I was starting with brick stitch, I would start with this central line all the way down here. What is the center row of this pattern? So pick up, 3 beads, or 3 yellow, 2 brown, 3 yellow, 1 pink, yellow, like that, and build that center row, and then do the one side and then come back and do the other side. You can, of course, start this with peyote stitch as well. It is harder to work out really neat increases that way, but it's a really good way to use a peyote pattern to create a brick stitch piece. So what I'm going to show you is how I actually do that with some size 11 beads. So here is my little demonstration piece that I created earlier. So this is some size 11 seed beads, and you can see here I've got a very slight pattern. Probably a bit hard to see with the colours that I've chosen, so I'm going to do some a little bit brighter this time so that you can actually see that pattern. But we actually will start this with a single row of brick stitch, or ladder stitch actually, sorry, it's ladder stitch to actually join these, and a single row of ladder stitch to start off that brick stitch piece. So I'm going to get myself some thread. Again, I'm just using some fire line that I've got here. And my fire line thread, I haven't started with any particular amount. I've just pulled a thread of fire line. It's probably about 1 metre long. Depending upon how big your piece is, you will choose, you know, a longer or shorter thread. But for demonstration, it's just about 1 metre thread that I've got here. Now I have some size 11 beads. These ones are called Indigo Iris and Mayuki one. I love those ones. And I've got my other favourite here, which is the, I think it's called Galvanised Beige, but it's a nice rosy gold colour. And there's a pink one there that I'll use as well. So to start this piece, I'm doing a ladder stitch. So I pick up 2 beads on my needle, bring them through and leave, you know, a tail, enough to hang on to. And then I go back through those 2 beads again. Hi, Susan from Las Vegas. And I want those 2 beads to be sitting side by side. So what I'm going to do now is pick up a 3rd bead and go back through that 2nd bead added, like that. And I'm making these into a flat ladder stitch row, so they're sitting side by side. So again, I'll come back through the last bead just added, pick up another bead, go back through the one I've just added, making sure that the beads are now sitting all in a row. You can see all the holes are facing the same way. Come back through the bead that I just added, pick up a bead. So imagine this is the central line of a beading pattern, and what I was doing was choosing beads based on that colour. So I'll pick up 1 each time to make that central row, or starting row. And it's flimsy. It's not as easy as hanging onto the metallic frame as what the first set I demonstrated are. But sometimes you may not want a frame in your piece, but this is a really good way to start, is by utilising the central row to build your brick stitch base. So I've got now my little ladder stitch row here. I'm not going to do much more than that. You can see there all the holes are facing the same way and they're all sitting side by side. So again, I'm coming out through the last bead and I'm just holding this. Hi from Las Vegas. Oh, you've been here from the start. Hi, Regina. I'm sorry I didn't see that earlier. Welcome. Again, another Saturday night girl. Thanks so much for joining me. So again, I'm coming out through the bead, the last bead that I've added. I'm picking up 2 beads. Remember, we start our brick stitch row with 2 beads each time. And I'm going through that 2nd thread bridge just there. And come back through the last bead just added like that. Pull that nice and tight. It's flimsy. It's not as I said, not as nice as working off the frame, but in a couple of rows, this will sort itself out. So again, I'm picking up 1 bead. I'm going through the next thread bridge added, which is this one here. It's a bit loose, or is it? No, it's that one there. Pick up 1 bead and go through like that, and it will just slide right next to one another. You can see there they're starting to make that nice firm little starting strip. The first row is always the trickiest, but once you've got your first row done, you can fly with this. So keep going right across. Again, you can, if I was going to make this more of a shaped piece, I could continue on with lattice stitch to make longer sections and join those to the next rows. So lattice stitch for a single row and then adding brick stitch either side is the way that you build a brick stitch piece without a metallic frame or a frame to hold it with. Going through again that thread bridge like that. Did that twist? It looks like it twisted. It did. I'm just going to have to undo that little bit and do that one again. There, it did twist. Again, this is live beading, so you will see mistakes from time to time. So now I've just done my second row. So that's now a little bit firmer. It's on that lattice stitch original line at the start. I've done a second row. And now if I was going to do a pattern on this, I would pick up, again, start with 2 beads. Pull them tight, and you can see there it starts to just get firmer as we do it. How many am I going to have there? 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. So 7 beads. So I'll start with a nice little diamond pattern. So I know that I've got an odd number there now that I'm going to have. So I'll start with I'll put a rose gold one in there. Again, with beading, it's all about the numbers, counting, making sure that you've got odd numbers where you need them or even numbers where you need them. Odd numbers for this type of work really well because they give you a central line to focus on. So there I've put my first little section in there, which will create a pattern. Sunshine Beaders have joined me too. Welcome, Sunshine Beaders. I'm actually teaching at the Sunshine Beaders next week up in Queensland. So I will be teaching 3 classes there next week. A cosmic tassel pendants, which is a peyote stitch style pendant. A filigree earrings, which is a metallic frame. There's using a similar method actually of brick stitch for metallic frame and with some fringing, and the Nestle earrings, which are using the vintage glass components. So I'm really looking forward to travelling up to Queensland next week and doing some teaching up there with my friends at the Sunshine Beaders. So if you're local to Brisbane, or you want to travel, have a look at the Sunshine Beaders. I think there's still a couple of workshops available. I'm also taking a workshop in polymer clay as well, which will be great. Oh, there goes Honeybun barking at nothing, most likely. The neighbours. Okay, so you can see now I've started to get my pattern in there, and all that's done has been that I've picked up a different bead colour to create that pattern. So I'll now pick up another... Sorry. Oh, see, I made a mistake there. I only picked up 1 instead of 2. Yes, I'm very much looking forward to being with you up there again, Jill, too. It'll be great. So Gil's going to be my teacher for polymer clay up there, so that's exciting. I'm looking forward to learning some more in that space. If you're a follower of my On a String page, you'll know that I've been learning polymer clay myself, so I'm looking forward to taking a new class in that. I've actually been learning how to make my own silk screens with my Cricut Maker, so that's been a learning curve for me in the last couple of days, playing around with making silk screens and stencils. So always learning, always trying to do new things. You can see there now I've got my nice little pattern in this brick stitch, and I'll just keep going on with that. So, because I want to show you how I'll go to the other side to make this a diamond shape. And keep picking those up. Again, we're reducing by 1 every time, which will give us a nice little triangular point. But if I wanted to make this shape go back this way, I would continue on adding ladder stitch and make it longer either side. So it's a start with ladder stitch. You use ladder stitch to create your shapes and edges where you want things to go out further, or, you know, create arms or legs if you're doing a doll piece, etc. So it's ladder stitch as a base for brick stitch. And again, on my last bead, I'm flipping so that it goes the other way. I'm going to run that needle all the way down the side. So you can see there I've created a nice little triangle. Hi, Melissa. Nice to have you here as well. Now, I've come back to my central row here, which was that first ladder stitch. And now I would just build the opposite, do the opposite. So again, pick up 2 beads, go through the second bead added just there, and keep adding those on every time. So what this does now, it's so much firmer and easier to work with. The first row is the worst row. It's loose, but after you've done a couple of rows, you actually have something really substantial to hang on to. And this one then goes right across and becomes the next foundation row for a brick stitch piece. So this one, I'm going to finish this off in a second and go and show a couple of other things. So there you go. I've now gone back to the start, and you can see there that's where I would build out that row, and that's how I would create a brick stitch piece. So thank you for watching both of those. I'm now going to just show you how I use brick stitch in bead embroidery. So as I said earlier, bead embroidery is my all-time favourite thing to do. I love the freedom that you get with bead embroidery, because it's pretty easy to undo a mistake if you make one, or turn a mistake into a feature. So it's one of the things I love about it. So what I've got here is just a piece of polymer clay that I had already done just a peyote edge around, and I thought I'd show you how I do a brick stitch edge on these types of pieces. So I'm using a different thread on this one. I'm actually using a 1G thread, so I'm sorry it's black and it's probably hard to see. Actually, I might just move that. Is that a bit easier to see that thread there? And what I'm actually edging that with is with O beads. I love the look of O beads around these edges because they give a really beautiful, delicate, lacy feel to a piece. So you can see those O beads there. They're just, I think they just finish off a bead embroidery piece particularly well. And then I'm going to do some brick stitch edging around that as well. So again, I started my piece with 2 beads. You can see the loose one there, which is the first one. So again, always start with 2 beads when starting a brick stitch piece. And I've got my thread coming out of a bead here. I've picked up a bead, and I'm just going to push my thread through the leather and the ultra suede about a bead's width, and then bring my needle back through that bead just added. So it's very, very similar to what we just did on the peyote triangle, the brick stitch triangles. I pick up a bead, I go through about a bead's width, and bring my needle back through. One of the tricks with using this bead embroidery edge, I've got a little gap here. You can see that little gap just there. I will not try and squeeze another bead in there because they just gets too bunchy. I'm better off to join those here. So I'm just going to go through that. That's the very first bead that I picked up, which you didn't see. I'm sorry, I did prepare that one earlier. And then just come back up through that again. And I've now got a really nice brick stitched edge all the way around this piece. But what I wanted to show you was how to build out some brick stitching. What colour will I use? I'll use a silvery colour to build out a brick stitch edge on this piece as well. So again, I want to come through one of these thread bridges. So I'm just going to bring my needle through the thread bridge there. I'll pick up 2 beads, and I'm using a size 8 bead here. I'll go through that next thread bridge and then just bring my needle through the last bead added. you can see now the holes are starting to point towards the outside. So because I'm going around an oval piece or a round piece, I'm probably not going to stick to the, next thread bridge. I'm just going to try and space my beads so that they fill in the gaps. So sometimes it might be one whole bead or one whole thread bridge that I go across, or sometimes I might fit two into the one so that they space themselves around this piece. So you can see there I'm just adding a size 8 bead over the top of that laced edge bead. You can see now that will build out a brick stitch edge all the way around this polymer clay piece that I had already done some peyote stitch around. So brick stitch edging in bead embroidery is the absolute foundation, or I think it is, for finishing off your pieces. So once you've done your, your capture of your piece, and then you might want to put a nice edge using O beads or demi rounds, my other favourite. People who know me know how much I love a demi round bead as well. I love to use these beads as finishing beads in these types of pieces because they're really thin, they fit really well, and they're unobtrusive, I think, as well, is probably the other word I'd use to describe them. So O beads and demi rounds as a brick stitch piece around the edge of bead embroidery. I've actually got there's a YouTube video of me actually doing this on my YouTube channel as well, if you're interested in seeing more of that one. So that's probably my most popular YouTube video, is me doing a bead embroidery edge. So if you're interested in seeing more detail on that, by all means check out my YouTube channel. I can't believe I just said that, but that's what it is. So have a look if you're interested in that. So you can see there I've actually done a really nice now brick stitch edging around that piece. Again, all my holes are facing outwards with this. And this now gives me a foundation to build other rows around. So I could continue, I probably will, I might actually make that like a half piece maybe and build some fringe out that way is probably what I will do. So that's just me playing around and making it up as I go along. So for people who joined a bit later, I'm just going to show you a couple of the other things that we did here today. One of them was I showed you how I've used round acrylic frames to make little half rainbows in brick stitch. So these just use reducing sizes of beads to actually create that look. And I've used the smoke fire line here on this edge, so you can just faintly see that there. But again, tie my knot at the start and then build in the first row and the second, third, fourth, fifth row of those to create those little half rainbows. I actually then created a fuller version. So this one actually uses the crystal fire line all the way around, and I've just popped an earring wire in between the beadwork there, so I didn't have to attach it at all. And again, I've used a reducing size bead. So start with an 8, 2 rows of size 11, 1 row of size 15, and then a little tiny row of 3mm round crystals, they look like in that. So that's one way of using a frame. The second piece that I actually created here today was my brick stitch triangle earrings. If you're starting with brick stitch, by all means start with a frame shaped like this. A triangle frame is perfect for actually learning. I created then this little set of rows, I think there's probably 13 rows there of brick stitch to create those earrings, and then popped a little drop on the bottom of those, so they just need a hook on them and they'll be completed. I also showed how to start off a brick stitch piece and then move to the other side to actually create a freeform piece that doesn't have a frame attached to it as well. And then I just showed how to do some brick stitch edging on a bead embroidery piece. So that's some of my demonstration for today. And if you're interested, I will show you how I actually store my Delica beads as well for those who were interested. So bear with me while I just drop the phone. Oh, gosh. Okay, drop the phone. Now you get to see all my bead room as well. But here are my Delica beads stored in drawers. So they're all stored by number. You can see here I have all the number of these stored in drawers. I have the bigger containers stored in the top drawer here as well. And then I just have 2 drawers all stored by number of all of my Delica beads as well. And all my other beads are stored by colour. So for those who are interested, that's how I store my other beads as well. So I'm just going to flip that around. Thanks very much for coming along today and seeing my brick stitch basics, the way that I like to use them and teach that stitch. If anyone's really interested, by all means pop along to the next session, which is Design on the Fly. I've got Linda from Banjo Beads supplying a green theme for me to demonstrate with that day, so who knows what we'll be creating on that day. I'm really looking forward to that. That'll be on a Saturday. Thank you everyone for coming along and having a look today. Really appreciate your support. And if you've got any questions or any feedback, by all means, get in touch. Thanks everybody. Have a great evening and a great day. Bye for now.